I'm looking at natural gas prices once again moving higher this morning, and I know that European governments have spent a lot of time thinking about how Europe can act on this front. What can Europe do, given all of the geopolitics? What can Europe do to try and address higher energy prices for Europeans?
Well, good morning. In the short run, it's clear that we have to take, as a lot of governments across Europe and beyond, some emergency measures to cap the prices, to make sure that for consumers during the winter we don't have a difficulty in purchasing power, and to help them, which we announced again this morning in France, to cap these prices, electricity prices in particular. It also means that we have to probably speed up our green transition in Europe, because it's clear that, especially for fossil energy, the prices will remain high over the longer run. It also means that we should be even more involved in the reduction of geopolitical tensions, which play a role also in this period of high prices.
Good morning. You're continuing to act to protect consumers from the higher gas prices. Are you prepared to kind of continue this indefinitely, given that the futures market says those prices will stay elevated for at least another year? And how much is that programme going to cost the French government?
Well, you're right. I mean, it's not. We cannot sum up our policy to emergency measures, even if we are ready. And the Prime Minister of France said it very clearly that over the next months, I don't know exactly how long it will last, but probably a significant part of 2022, we will have to do these capping measures. The overall measures we have taken already will have a cost probably higher than 15 billion euro for France this year. So it's a very high price, of course, but we need this because it would be unsustainable in a recovery moments not to help consumers in this respect. But of course, it also means that we have to help, including through public investment in the short run, to renovate houses, to reduce the use in cities of cars and so on. All these measures of the green transition, which are very concrete, we have to speed them up too, because otherwise the price to pay, even for governments, will be even higher.
Thinking about the green transition and what is green, Clement, we know that the German government has been on a very different page to France when it comes to the definition of nuclear power, and to some extent angered by the European Commission proposing to label nuclear energy as green. What will a compromise look like that will allow France and Germany to be on the same, to be of the same mind on this?
Well, it's clear that there is a difference of approach in this respect between France and Germany. I want to underline that a large majority of EU countries have supported the idea that nuclear energy in particular should be included in what we call taxonomy, which is a list of investments which are taking part in the green transition and recognized so officially at the European level. It doesn't mean that every country will have to use nuclear energy, of course, and I think this is the most important. We do respect national choices in this field, and I think Germany does the same. So for France, nuclear energy will remain a large part of the energy mix. Some EU countries are resuming nuclear programs, like Poland, like Czech Republic, for instance. We have to get this flexibility, and sometimes we have to agree to disagree, or to have different paths towards the same objective, and this is the most important, to have the same objective at the EU level, which is carbon neutrality 2050, and on this we should all stick to the EU framework and then accept that there can be different national strategies to reach the same goal.
Clement, France has continued to report a very, very large number of COVID case numbers. Almost 2 million cases in the past week alone. Approximately 3% of the French population has officially returned a positive test in the last week. And yet, you've relaxed your border restrictions in the last 24 hours. Will there be any chance of France increasing restrictions again, or are we moving out of the pandemic in France?
We have to be very cautious. We are, I hope, in a moment where we are probably close, so say the experts, to the peak of this new wave of Omicron in particular, even though the Delta variant is still quite strong in France. The levels of daily cases is still very important in France, which is justifying our measures that we are discussing right now in Parliament, and I hope we will have a final deal between the two chambers of French Parliament in the coming hours to have have what we call pass vaccinal, which is a pass based on the vaccination, on the third dose now. This is the only way to protect us against this wave, which will last still a bit, and probably a few weeks at least, and others that could come. We have to be extremely cautious and to anticipate all situations in this pandemic. So it would be, I think, unwise to say that we are out of it, even though, and we see the impact of the vaccine all over the world, all over Europe in particular, including the UK, that this is the best tool and weapon we have to protect ourselves, even when there is a high number of cases, against hospital cases and serious cases.
Clement, are you concerned when you look across the channel? Clearly, there are some parts of the Brexit conversation that are still unresolved. Are you concerned when you see the difficulties the Prime Minister is in the UK domestically, that might result in a tougher stance towards the European Union, either from him or from his Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, who now leads those Brexit talks? Are you concerned that we might see tougher language coming from a tougher stance from the UK government?
Well, I don't want to interfere in the domestic debate in the UK, which I, of course, follow very closely. We have always been very clear that we don't index our interest and talks with the UK on the protocol, on the fisheries issue, on the domestic policy or politics or difficulties that could happen in the UK. What I want to say very clearly is that we still expect whatever happens in the UK and whoever is in charge of the discussions to be serious, to be committed to the agreements, to be more flexible and more constructive, because I think a narrative in the UK government and in the UK politics sometimes today, which is based on EU bashing every day, leads nowhere for any one of us.
OK, and if Article 16 were to be triggered, this is Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol, were to be triggered as part of those conversations around Northern Ireland, what would be France's response, or what should be the European response? How far should it go?
We've always been very clear. We are open, and we have demonstrated it very concretely with concrete proposals to give some precise flexibility on the functioning of the protocol. We cannot accept that the protocol is just taken away. This would be the result of activation of Article 16. I'm happy to see that the UK is more cautious now about mentioning every day this threat, which I think is wiser. If we would go to such a solution, or I think a deadlock, of course there would be EU reaction to make sure that we use all the tools built in the agreement to make this commitment and this agreement itself respected and complied with fully. It could be legal procedures and so on. I don't want to go into this speculation and discussion, because at the moment, and let's stick to this constructive approach, the UK is not, I think, mentioning anymore this concrete possibility in the short run.
With France assuming the EU presidency, how should the EU strategy towards defence generally change? And I guess with a particular focus on what's happening on the eastern border and some of the neighbouring countries, how much more proactive should EU be in kind of defending its neighbours and its borders on that side?
Well, I mean, European defence should, of course, be strengthened. We have to be very pragmatic on this, I think. We had probably too many debates on the right concept, whether it's called sovereignty, strategic autonomy, and so on at the European level. When we look at the concrete actions we need to take, we have made progress over the last years, creating for the first time a European defence budget, even if it's still small, and I think should be increased. We would work on this during the French presidency. We would adopt for the first time. It's urgent. I hope we will conclude it in March. There is an important step this week between defence and foreign affairs ministers, the strategic compass of the EU. And on current crisis, we see still that the European Union is not always a player, but let's be also frank and honest to ourselves. When we look over the last years to the tensions between Ukraine and Russia in particular, it's through European formats, the Normandy format involving France and Germany in particular, that we have made some limited but some progress and reducing tensions in this respect. So it's, I think, fine if in different cases there are different formats from Europeans. Sometimes it's France and Germany leading, sometimes it's EU, sometimes it's ad hoc, as we do in Sahel with the Takuba task force. But Europeans are more active in these in these defense issues, and to face these threats. We saw it again towards Russia and Belarus when there was an action against the EU border, organizing migrant flows. It was an EU response here which reduced the pressure and the tensions over the last weeks.